Okay, welcome everybody. This is Bill Murphy with Bill Murphy TV, and I want to welcome Mirinda Carfrae, who is joining us today. And as many of you know and aware, Mirinda is the world champion from this year's Kona Ironman. She's the women's winner, and she's also had just a incredible streak of success in 2010. And I've asked her to join us today because with Bill Murphy TV, I interview top-notch people and top-notch athletes for sure, but also people that have done unusual things in their life, unusual accomplishments, and in particular looking at finding out a little bit about who they are as a person and what really gets them, what inspires them. How do they stay inspired how do they stay motivated when things aren't so good? Because right now, Mirinda's obviously very, very successful, but it's taken her a while to get to this point. I think everybody needs to take that in context. So I wanted to give Mirinda a chance to share with us how she lives her life and her philosophy of living with the ups and downs of her sport and her general life. So welcome, Mirinda.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Bill.
So Mirinda, can you share with us a little bit about how you got started with triathlon and a little bit about how you knew that you wanted to be an athlete and a professional athlete, and kind of where was that turning point for you in your life?
I actually started triathlon at kind of a late age. I guess by today's standards, late age. Most of the people I'm racing against didn't start till, they'd finished high school or in college. And that was pretty much the same for me. I grew up on a farm in Australia with 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And we all played basketball growing up. I started playing basketball when I was 7 and absolutely loved it. I was definitely mad about sports and basketball in particular. I just loved playing. Ended up playing for 11 years, and the reason I stopped basketball was because I found triathlon. And I found the sport in 99, just through our team physiotherapist, who was also a triathlon coach, and I did some off-season weight training with him and a little bit of running. So that's how I found out about the sport of triathlon, and a year later he saw me running, and he just suggested I give triathlon a go and asked me if, I was at all interested. And that's sort of how my triathlon career took off. But I think I'd always done well in sports. I was always a great runner. I was, house captain for sports, and always did well in PE and pretty much any sport I did. But I remember I was good at school, but I just didn't really enjoy studying. I don't think anyone really enjoys studying, but I just remember when I was probably about 13 or 14 saying to my mum, why can't we just play sports all day? And it just was like a ridiculous throwaway comment that I didn't even think was possible. And she's like, well, you can't do that. You've got to go to university and you've got to get a job. And it just wasn't even an option. So now to be sitting here, that's what I do all day. I do triathlon. I train every day and I race week in, week out. And it's funny that at 13 or 14 I said, made that comment as a throwaway comment, and I remember it now. And now that's what I do.
How does your mother? So did you ever bring that up to her currently? Did you ever ask her about that comment back then? And does she support you now?
Oh, she totally supports me now. I actually haven't brought it up to her. Or maybe I had. I can't remember if I have or I haven't. But I remember. Yeah, definitely. She was always supportive of me in whatever I did. I'm the 4th child, so by the time it got to me, she was just like, whatever makes you happy, whatever you enjoy, we'll support you in. So I'm so lucky to have a mother that will be so supportive and understand.
No, that's great. That's great. And I'm, right now you're experiencing a very unusual string of success, and it's just great to see you achieving that. And it reminds me of there was a very successful rock band that had achieved. They all of a sudden their records were all going number 1, and they interviewed the lead singer, and the lead singer said, "Well, it's I'm an overnight 30-year success story. And so you've had, 10 years of this. And I think a lot of people come to this and say, I want to achieve what the results of my 20s and my 30s, and they're joining triathlon and, a little bit later in life, and they want to just resurrect, the speed of 18, 19, 20, 25 years old. Can you tell us about your 10 years? I mean, it's taken you a while to get to this point. You've had great success along the way, but can you tell us about your journey?
Yeah, well, when I started triathlon, I was focused on more the Olympic, because the first triathlon was being held in Sydney Olympics, so that sort of was my first goal and I guess my first passion. I didn't really know about Ironman triathlon until a couple of years later, but I guess, yes. So off the bat, I got into my first Australian team pretty quickly. I think under 19 World Championships in Edmonton, which is in 01, and I believe I did my first race at the end of 99. So it was pretty quickly that I was gaining success or seeing results, even though I really was brand new. I'd never swam before. I never, grew up playing basketball and running around the backyard. I never rode a road bike for sure. I had a BMX bike that we rode around the farm, but that's a lot different. And I didn't ride that, obviously, hadn't ridden that since I was a little kid. So I was definitely coming into the sport as a complete newbie, and I thought it was just amazing how quickly I was able to find success in triathlon. And after playing basketball for 11 years, I'd made a state team, scraped in a state team and sat on the bench. My height doesn't help. I'm only 5'3", but that was just never going to be my path, I guess. And I think once you are on the right path, doors open and things become easy, and that was certainly the case with triathlon. I made my first Australian team, which got me into the Australian Institute of Sport. And that helped out a lot with funding. My parents didn't have a whole lot of money, so that enabled me to travel internationally with the Australian Institute of Sport team, which was a junior team at the time, and then experience racing on the world stage and against other athletes, and taught me how to live and train overseas, where it's you don't have all your home comforts. So that was for a few years, probably about 4 or 5 years. I was in the Australian Institute of Sport and racing ITU distance, the Olympic distance racing, and also shorter races, and just learning about myself and my limits and so forth. Through that time, I sort of started to realise that Ironman and longer distance races would be my strength. But having said that, I also knew that the best women in the sport were in their mid-30s. Best women in Ironman seemed to be peaking mid-30s, so I didn't want to jeopardise my longevity in the sport by going to Ironman too early and maybe injuring myself or burning out, because you see that all the time. So I kept racing short course, and then fortunately when I was ready to make the step up, or when I kind of was forced to, because I'd really needed to start making some money. And in ITU, there's no sponsorship really, and unless you're like number one in the world, you're not making a whole lot of money. So I was kind of forced to step up and look for some races to make some prize money. And at that point, I think 05, I did 2 half Ironman. I came to the US and did 2 half Ironman races. And then in 06, it was like, okay, do I step up and do Ironman, or do I keep just racing non-drafting races in the US? And that's when the 70.3 series started, which was perfect timing for me, a perfect stepping stone to Ironman. So that gave me an extra, that was 06, so it gave me an extra 3 years to race half Ironmans and just learn more about racing long distance before I had to step up to Ironman. So I feel like my path's been pretty easy, and I believe that when you're on the right path, it should be easy.
So can you just share with me about that for a second? So, doing what you love. Is doing what you love early on, even though you were experiencing this success and did the financial success match early on to where it is right now? So, I mean, did you have to kind of stay the course with your love and your passion, and then stay with it over a period of time, or did you experience unusual financial success in the exact same trajectory you're experiencing your competitive success? Absolutely not. The financial gains have only really been
in the last couple of years since I got first in 70.3 World Champs. I was able to sign a couple of sponsorship deals, but they weren't very lucrative. They were enough for me to live and not really have to worry too much. But it wasn't until I stepped up to Ironman and got second last year that I really signed some deals or
Sure.
really started to have financial success that I feel like now matches my triathlon success. But early on, I remember through 03, 04, 05, I was, not making any money. I'd come home and I'd have to either take a part-time job or work a little bit in Australia to be able to afford to go back over in the US. I remember doing races in Australia for $100 prize money, and then in Australia it's very competitive. A lot of people would show up for that $100, and come home with $50, and that would be able to feed me for the next week, and then trying to figure out how to make some more money, and so I was able to keep racing. And there was always those questions. I had definitely had a deep down feeling that I was on the right path, but you always have those questions. Am I wasting my time? Should I? I gave up university. So I had started university when I found triathlon. I did my first year of university, and then with the Institute of Sport, we were required to travel internationally through the mid part of the year, which is kind of when all of our exams and assignments and so forth are due. So I kind of had to go part-time, and then eventually drop back to not at all. And so, that was definitely it's kind of like a safety to go to university and get a degree, and then you're well educated and you have a good resume for whatever job you want to go into after. But I gave all of that up because I had this opportunity, first of all, to go and race triathlon, and then I was getting the little successes along the way, which told me that I was on the right path. But you still, you look at your bank account, there's no money in there. You're like, okay, really, why am I doing this to myself? The stress, it's really tough when you're starting out in the sport.
Well, I think this is I think getting to the meat of it. It's you stay the course of your passion, and the passion. I think it's important for people that are watching this and your fans to know, and the fans of Bill Murphy TV to know that get to that unusual point of greatness. It's not an easy path, and the money doesn't always follow the vision that you have for your life. And actually, that started at 12 or 13 years old, and because following sport is not necessarily a cultural accepted practice. The cultural accepted is go to university and get a job, and I think that's fantastic, and I think it's great that you shared that with us. Thank you.